I can confidently say that one of the most frustrating things when it comes to being on a manifestation journey, a personal development journey, or just bettering your life in some sort of capacity is when you don't get what you want. You set out on this journey in the first place to heal different limiting beliefs, fears, doubts, traumas from the past, and you take the inspired action to create a better life for yourself, yet you still continue to find yourself in the place where you're not manifesting what it is that you desire into your life. And on today's podcast episode, we are going to be diving deep into my own personal experience around that, as well as what I believe is actually cosmically happening when we don't get what we want. What's up, and welcome to the That's So Rich podcast, the show that's redefining wealth and helping you manifest a life that is rich in every single way. I'm your host, Kat Kozad, transformation coach, manifestation expert, and spiritual guide, and together we're going to create your happiest, healthiest, and wealthiest life. I'm so happy you're here. Let's do this thing. What's up, y'all? Oh, I'm back. I'm on the air, and I promise that I'm not going anywhere this time. I know that I relaunched the podcast back in September and had quite a few episodes come out, and then I disappeared for like 6 weeks or something like that. And I actually sat down to record this podcast episode last week, and I did record it last week, and I got to the end of it, and I re-listened to the show, and I was so frustrated because I didn't say anything of substance in it. It was kind of like I was dancing around what I actually wanted to say, but there was a deep fear surrounding actually just being super fucking honest about what's been going on in my life over the past year and a half and how things have felt more frustrating than they had in the years prior to that. And I didn't launch it because I was like, this is fucking stupid. Like, there's no substance in this episode. And I am realizing that over the past year and a half, essentially from like March of 2023 until now, I almost had this period of time where I stopped saying what it is that I meant. And it's not that I wasn't saying things that are true, because everything that I've talked about since then has been true. I've just danced around it because I was so fearful to have controversial opinions or to share things that may ruffle people's feathers, essentially because I went through a really traumatic experience back in 2022 where I had a really big falling out with one of the most important people in my life. And in this falling out, there was a time where this person called me a cult leader and that I was essentially like duping people, telling them all of these false things, getting rich at like other people's expense. And it really broke me, to be completely honest. But I didn't realize that at the time because my natural reaction to this fallout was to try to swing in the opposite direction of like, fuck you, I'm gonna prove you wrong and do even more and help even more people and make even more money just so this person could see that they weren't right in what they were saying about me, as opposed to actually just taking this deep internal look at myself and being like, okay, it's okay for them to think that. It's okay for them to feel that way. Not everybody's going to get it. Not everybody's going to support you. That doesn't mean that you have to dim your light or tiptoe around all of these topics just to not potentially hurt people's feelings. And when I was recording the podcast episode last week, I was like, what the fuck am I doing? What the fuck am I saying? Also, I'm saying fuck so many times already on this podcast. Get ready. Apparently, it's going to be a fiery one. But really had this moment of realization where I was talking with one of my dear friends on Saturday night. We were getting a tea, and I was talking about how I feel as though the aftermath of this fallout has continued to manifest in some really crazy ways over the past, 2+ years. And that I didn't recognize any of it until after the fact. And that's so much of what I'm going to dive into on today's podcast episode. But ultimately, just saying all of this because I originally started this podcast with the intention of talking about things that people are afraid to talk about. I started this podcast as a platform to be so honest and open and vulnerable and share parts of my story and my experience so that people out there know that they're not alone within theirs. And I, somewhere along the way, I know it's definitely since this major fallout and traumatic moment that happened back in 2022, I started to dim my light a bit. And that manifested in a lot of the juice of the podcast, I feel as though being taken away, as well as me actually taking steps back in the podcast as well as other areas of my life to refigure out why I'm here, what I'm doing, what I'm saying. And I want to be honest about that because there's a lot of different coaches or leaders out there that paint this perfect picture of their life or say that they've healed all their trauma or that they are unfazed by the different experiences that happen in their life. And if that is true for them, go you cracked the fucking code somehow. But I never want to be that girl because one, I think it's completely unrealistic to never deal with hardship and say that you've healed all of your trauma when in reality we're constantly undergoing things, especially in the society that we have and the way in which the world is unfolding in recent years. There's so much shit that is constantly going on that is overstimulating, that is overwhelming, that is forcing all of us to experience triggers in situations that perhaps we never thought we would have to go through and things that our ancestors never went through either. So we're all learning new things at this time. And to say that I have it all figured out would be literally the biggest lie on planet Earth. But I want all of you to know that you don't have to have it all figured out in order to live a beautiful, abundant life. And that's even in the moments where shit feels really hard or life is not going the way that you necessarily want it to, doesn't mean that abundance isn't present and doesn't mean that you are not capable of having, being, and doing whatever it is that you desire. And in fact, those moments are probably bringing you closer to it. And then the second reason is because I never want to paint myself as the person who has it all figured out and is essentially like up on a pedestal and y'all need to listen to me because I'm the one who knows and you don't. There's so many resources out there like that. And it makes me so fucking mad because the reality is I'm just a girl and I'm figuring this all out as well. I made an Instagram post about this a few weeks ago, but we only know 4% of the known universe. Human beings are only aware of 4% of this universe. So anybody who says they're an expert in anything, yeah, maybe in like 4% of the known universe or whatever percentage of the 4% of the known universe. And so I say all of this to just let you know that like I'm figuring it all out too. This is my open and honest platform to just be so fucking real and raw with all of you. And sometimes that's really intimidating. And sometimes there's things that I feel as though I do need to tiptoe around because I haven't figured them out yet. But again, that's why I started this platform in the first place, because I believe the more that I can be transparent and honest about what I'm going through, then it gives you some semblance of belief in the fact that if I can do it, you can do it too, and that we're doing it together. And so with all of that being said, very long intro to the topic that we're getting into today, but big reason that I feel as though I have been experiencing some of the frustration that I've been experiencing over the past year and a half has really stemmed from that massive fallout that I was sharing with you guys and just the aftermath of that manifesting in some ways that I never would have expected. The reason that we're here today is because we're talking about coping with not getting what you want. So, since I started my intentional manifestation journey back in 2019, I feel incredibly blessed to say that I was basically manifesting every single thing that I wanted and so much more quickly. And in a way that I was like, holy shit, this is crazy to me that things just work this way and they manifest so easily. And it was, of course, effort to heal the different limiting beliefs and do the work internally to release the blockages that were holding me back before that period of time in my life, because before 2019, I was in like a full victim mentality of feeling like the world was out to get me. I lived essentially in like a constant state of anxiety and feeling as though life was never going to get better, and therefore manifesting more circumstances into my life that would reflect that back to me to try and help me heal from that. But as soon as I found intentional manifestation and started to implement it into my life got so much better, so drastically, so quickly. And as I started to share that story online, it started to inspire a lot of other people, and so many other people then reached out and I started helping them. I started the business. The business hit its first 6 figures within 10 months. I was able to pay off $70,000 worth of debt 10 months after that, and everything just started to essentially be this upward spiral in my life where it felt like everything that I wanted and so much more just was happening, moving to New York, buying my dream car, traveling around the world, doing it in style, like all of the things that on paper I could have ever imagined. And then back in, like I said, the summer of 2022, I ended up having a massive fallout that I told you all about at the beginning of the podcast. And after that, I got into this energy of like, fuck you, I'm going to prove you wrong, and kept working even harder to outdo myself and like manifest even greater things than I had before. And at the very beginning of 2023, I entered into this state where it felt as though I had no more energy to move forward. There was just complete confusion, a complete haze that washed over me, where I was like, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? Do I want to be doing any of it? And I started to question everything. And through questioning everything, honestly, it scared the shit out of me, but it also gave me so much more space to explore some of the things that I hadn't considered as options before, such as, like I've talked about on the podcast before, the idea of starting a non-alcoholic events company and building out the systems and the structures for that to be able to launch. And then ultimately getting to the place of being like, oh, wait, I don't actually want to do that. And the thing that I actually want the most is community, and to feel loved, and to feel like I have people to share this beautiful life that I've manifested together. Because prior to that, I felt really lonely. I had manifested a life greater than anything that I could have ever imagined for myself in such a short period of time. And like I said, I had everything that I could have asked for on paper, but I felt so ridiculously lonely because the close friends that I had were back in Colorado and I was living out in New York City at that point. And there was a lot of family drama that was going on, and I just felt so completely lonely. And so for the rest of 2023 into the beginning of 2024, my focus went away from what am I doing with my career? What am I doing with my business? What am I doing with manifesting in this sort of capacity? And all of that focus that I had been putting into the career, the business, the things that I really had the past few years before that got shifted into my relationships. And I feel so grateful. I ended up manifesting just the most incredible friendships here in New York City, and also through online communities, and connected with people on a deeper level than I ever had before. And through these connections to the people that started to come into my life, my relationship to the divine started growing even stronger. And so I've had a relationship with the divine for years and years. This is something that's like not new to me in any sort of capacity. But when I first started to build this relationship with the divine, it was very much so a belief of like, I need to do things in a certain way in order for the divine to reward me. And I showed up in an energy of like, okay, if I do things perfectly, or if I check these things off the checklist, or if I show I'm doing these things, then the divine will reward me. And in deepening my connection to other people and being able to just spend so much more time in my own energy, focusing in on what it is that I really wanted, this relationship to God specifically started to come online so loudly for me. I would say since like August of 2023, but really has built over all of 2024. And the relationship that I have with God has felt so completely different than the relationship that I was naming as like source, spirit, the universe, whatnot. And it's not to say that any of these are different. I'm a firm believer in the fact that the divine shows up differently for every single person, and it's what makes you feel good to be connected to. And I've really realized over the past year that for me, it's God, and that God's love is not conditional. God's love is something that is ever present, and anything that says otherwise is actually an illusion. And so in this experience of building this deeper connection to God, I was actually really confused at first because I had only ever been given narratives of what God is and who God is through Christianity or Catholicism or organized religion in some sort of capacity. And I think there's truth in every single religion that exists. But for me, I haven't wanted to specifically put myself in a label surrounding my relationship to God because I want to explore it in my own way versus how other people have essentially said it needs to be explored. And that was really confusing to me at first because there was a lot of different narratives of how to deepen my connection to God and where to find God and what God is and all of these different things. And all of this to say that there's just been a ton of confusion. Let's be honest. There's been so much confusion since the beginning of 2023 up until very recently. And in that confusion, I felt as though I knew how to help other people manifest what it is that they wanted into their life, but I was confused on if I still had the ability to manifest in the way that I had before. And again, that being a big part of the fallout that I had with this important person, but ultimately just so much confusion in it. And wanting to manifest, but manifesting things felt different than it had before because there was so much of like forcing, pushing, making shit happen, operating from the masculine energy a lot of the time in 2019, 2020, 2021, beginning of 2022. And this softening of my heart, my spirit, the way that I see the world, the way that I interact with the divine and manifestation itself has taken place since. And it was a really confusing and honestly kind of scary journey at times, being like, oh, okay, I am choosing to see and do things differently. And for that reason, I'm essentially building a whole new belief system for myself and building a whole new operating system for myself. I'm showing up in the world in a completely different way. And like I said, I had complete confidence in the fact that I could and can help anybody manifest anything that they want into their life. But there was a different perspective or like relationship that was happening inside of myself, which over the past year and a bit has just forced me into a deeper state of inner work than I've ever done in my entire life, all through this relationship to God and asking God to help me with removing or eliminating or coming to terms with or peace with the things that had been burdening me. And so during this period of time, with all of the confusion that was happening and me drawing back into myself as opposed to being outward facing and sharing everything and like kind of putting it out there for the world to look at with me, which may sound and seem like it was a period of time where there was a lot of grief or like a lot of hard, heavy emotion. But the reality is that it was one of the periods of my life that I've felt the happiest thus far. But there was so much confusion surrounding like my path forward and what it was exactly that I was doing in terms of my podcast or the direction that I wanted to take my business or anything else. So I really went into this like retracted period where I just didn't talk about it because I didn't have value to provide in what felt like the path that I wanted to take forward versus where I have been, because I didn't know what that path was. And so ultimately with that, I started to make less money than I had been making before in previous months, which was a big hit to my ego and also one of the most profound things that I've done for like deep healing inner work, because one of the things about inner work is that when things are going exactly how you want them to, there's not a lot to dig on. There's not a lot of things to be healed. Whereas when things aren't going the way that you want them to, there's a fuck ton of healing that can be done. And so not making as much money as I had done historically put me into the position of doing so much healing work on my relationship to money in a way that I didn't know I needed to heal my relationship with money, because this set of challenges hadn't presented itself yet in terms of having so much monetary success and then seeing that slow down. And one of the core things, just to give y'all an example of like some of the inner work that had been done during this period of time, was the recognition of the fact that I believed prior to this experience of the financial slowdown that I wasn't worthy of love or support from other people unless I was making a ton of money. And I never would have uncovered that limiting belief if it wasn't for the fact that I wasn't getting what I wanted. And I never would have had the opportunity to heal so many of the other like fears or doubts that have come up if it wasn't for the fact that there was this confusion that set in, this haze, this feeling like the castle that I had built for myself through willpower and forcing and hustling and whatnot had crumbled a bit, so that I could rebuild my castle from the energy of faith and trust in God. Not so much me doing it by myself and being this self-made woman, and more so opening up my palms, surrendering my control over, and allowing God to help me fully build a life that is not only monetarily rich, but rich in every single capacity, and one that will be sustainable and long-lasting beyond the hustle, beyond the grind, beyond the things that I have done in the past to get what I want. And so all of this to say, all of this a testimony to when we don't get what we want, it's because we're going to receive something greater. But in the period of not getting what you want, between not getting what you want and receiving something greater, I believe we go through an initiation period to release what is no longer working so that we can open ourselves up to a way of being and a way of creating that we never would have found on our own, and that can only be found through a connection to the divine in some sort of capacity. Again, for me, it's God. For you, maybe it's the universe, maybe it's source, maybe it's spirit, maybe it's Mother Nature, maybe it's Gaia, maybe it's all things good. Who knows? But in the period of time where we're not getting what we want, it's so that we can finally open our palms up. The way that I'm seeing it is like when you're in a state of control and trying to make things happen because you're so fearful that if you were to loosen your grip on control, that life would fall apart. So you hold on to things that maybe are bringing some sort of level of fulfillment, but aren't giving you the highest level of fulfillment that you could experience. And because of that, you're limiting your capacity to be able to experience life in the way that your soul intended on you experiencing when it incarnated into your human body. And so in that control, in that state, you're really limiting the amount of abundance, the amount of love, the amount of connection that you could create, not only to yourself and others, but also to the divine. And when you finally get to the place, like I have over the past year and a half, of resisting my circumstances, feeling the confusion, fighting the confusion, trying to make the confusion going away, and ultimately getting to the place of like, you know what? My way isn't working. My way isn't working. My way of trying to force shit into place and make things stick around that don't want to stick around, and make money in ways that are no longer feeling aligned, and so on and so forth. It's not working. I'm tired. I'm so tired because I'm trying to do it by myself. And so instead of trying to do it by myself, I'm going to open up to the fact that there is a greater way for me to be able to live my highest path, my highest good. And it's through trusting that God has my back, through trusting that the universe is going to catch me, through trusting that the divine has a greater plan than anything that I could ever imagine for myself. And the image that I'm seeing with this, I don't know if y'all have seen this Instagram post before, but it says my plan, and then it says God's plan. And in my plan, it's a hand holding one rose, and then the other side underneath God's plan, it's a bouquet of roses, like an overflowing, abundant bouquet of roses. And that's the experience of it. So in those moments where you're not getting what you want, it may feel as though life is working against you, that you're doing something wrong, that there's something blocking you, stopping you, holding you back. And yes, maybe that is the truth. And there's always some sort of level of inner work that can be done. But you could also just be going through this period of time that is necessary for you to open up your palms and trust in the fact that God is creating a better plan for you than you could ever see for yourself. And if you are to build that connection, build that relationship with the divine, and so much of that being through your own inner knowing, because I'm a firm believer in the fact that the divine talks to us through our intuition, through thoughts that we think all day long, through the seeds of desire that have been planted on your heart, through your dreams, through all of these things, versus like outsourcing that relationship and trying to find it somewhere else. The divine already lives within you. So the more that you get to know yourself, the more that you build that trust in this inner knowing and the divinity that lives inside of you, the more that you're ultimately going to be led to a place greater than anything that you could ever imagine. And you wouldn't have been ready for something greater if it wasn't for not getting what you wanted. There's no way you could have prepared for something so much more abundant, so much more fitting and aligned for your life if you had got what you originally thought you wanted and hadn't gone through this season of whether it feels like trials or hardship or different experiences that have deepened your capacity to be able to receive. Because even though those moments where it feels as though things aren't turning out the way that you want them to, what's actually happening is you are learning how to deepen your capacity to receive. You are deepening the amount that you are able to hold by what you're going through and the way that you navigate through it. And again, allowing that like divine guidance in to help you through those moments, as opposed to trying to hustle and force through it. Because if you were to receive something greater without this like preparation or this deepening of your ability to receive all of it, then you would never catch it. And so this is really just what I want to offer to all of you who feel as though you haven't been getting what you want. Y'all, Same. Over the past year and a bit of my life, it has felt that way. And there were so many moments that I was looking back and trying to make sense of any of the shit that had been going on with the lack of clarity in my path and moving forward, and relationships that I thought were like the one, and being ghosted, and not having the same financial success that I had been seeing before in previous years, and all of these things. And ultimately, I can say that this isn't me saying everything is better now and I've figured it all out, but two things have taken place. One is I've been able to accept the present moment with so much more peace and gratitude than I ever have before. Whereas before I was constantly in this state of like, what's next, what's next, what's next, what's next? And being able to drop into, this is good. This is so good. Like, I'm so grateful for every single day. I feel God's love in every single moment because this is where I'm at right now. And that means that this is where I'm supposed to be. And one quick note on that before the second thing, where you're at right now is where you're supposed to be. You may not feel like it is, but who are you to say how your life is supposed to go versus, again, this divine plan that your soul chose to live when you incarnated into this human body? And the more that you resist where you're at, the more pain you're going to experience. But the more that you can look at your life and say, okay, this doesn't make logical or practical sense to me, but I am open to whatever God, source, spirit, the universe is giving to me in this moment, because I wouldn't be going through it if it wasn't part of my path and if it wasn't something that was going to bring me closer to everything that I want and more. So that is the first thing. Second thing that has become abundantly clear to me in this whole process of like, oh, okay, what I thought I wanted maybe wasn't it, is that what is in store for me and what is in store for you if you feel as though you are not manifesting what it is that you desire into your life right now, is that there is something so much greater coming up for you that if you were to know about it now, you wouldn't know how it's possible, and in some sort of way you would end up sabotaging it. Sometimes I believe the universe, God, source, spirit keeps things as a secret in terms of like confusion and not getting what you want, because if you were to know about them, then your human mind would try to figure out how to make them a reality or figure out like why it is in the first place and move you further away from it than closer to it. So everything that you're going through is the perfect circumstance, situation, opportunity to be able to gain the skills, the resources, the lessons that you need in order to receive that thing once the clarity does arrive. Because I can guarantee you the clarity will arise, and once the clarity is there, you will have the next steps presented in front of you to make it part of your reality. That is like God's promise to us, that there will always be clarity on a path that is meant for us when the moment arrives, and that there will be abundance to be found within it. And sometimes all we need within that is some sort of like community or guide or group of people to help you in the process of knowing that you're not alone and that there are steps available to take, even in these moments where you're feeling completely confused or like things aren't panning out the way that you want them to. And so one of the things that has come together for me and through me from God in this time of confusion and now so much more clarity is that I am meant to expand the way in which I help people receive abundance in their lives. And all of these ideas and all of these things that have been crossing my mind over the past year and a half that I've started to work on and then step away from and came back to ultimately have all come together to create one of the greatest pieces of work that I'm so grateful to now be able to offer to people, which is a community membership called Belief Society. And so Belief Society is a conscious community for the person who refuses to settle for less. What I mean by a conscious community is that it is a community of people who are wanting to better their lives in every single capacity and has an emphasis on exploring an alcohol-free lifestyle. And that doesn't mean that you have to be alcohol-free in order to join. It's just a community to be able to explore what life looks like when you remove substances from the equation. And so it is all about manifesting your best life, more money, more freedom, more time, more abundance in every single capacity, but also getting to do it alongside other people. And so with Belief Society, it is an all-in-one hub filled with an entire classroom section with thousands and thousands of dollars worth of manifestation, mindset, money, meditation, and other resources to help you align in mind, body, and soul, as well as online and in-person events, workshops, and activities. And when I say in-person, that being New York City for now, and a really vibrant and engaged community of other people who are just on a journey to better their lives and want to support other people in the process. And so I want to invite and extend an offer to everybody who's listening to this podcast episode to join a 7-day free trial for Belief Society. You can find the link down below in the show notes. But if you are the person who knows that you are made for a life of more, and perhaps you've either been going through this season of not getting what you want and wanting to figure out how to get to the other side, or everything is cruising along and you just want to continue with the momentum that you've built thus far, or anything else, this community is for you. It's for the person who knows that they are made for more and that they're not going to settle for anything less than a life that lights them up in every single way, truly being the happiest, healthiest, and wealthiest version of yourself. And like I said, there is a 7-day free trial to Belief Society down below in the show notes. Come check it out. Come join us. Come see what we got going on. And one thing I will note is that if you stay past your 7-day free trial, you get a free one-on-one coaching call with me. So if you have ever wanted a coaching call with me and you haven't yet had one, or you haven't thought that it was the right time, this is the time to do so. Now is the time to come on board and join Belief Society. We also have a Manifesting Freedom Challenge going on right now, which is the perfect thing to set you up for success before 2025 starts. So I can say, like I said throughout this podcast episode, all of the confusion, all of the things that I had gone through over the past few years has all essentially, I believe, led me to this moment where I get to bring something to life that feels like the most important work that I've ever done. And I would love for you to be a part of it. So like I said, you can click down below in the show notes to claim your 7-day free trial to Belief Society. And I cannot wait to see you on the inside. I'm sending you all of my love. I hope that this podcast episode brought some clarity to some of you, and I will chat with you on the next one.